The autumn sun painted golden rivers across the surface of Lake Serenity as hundreds of guests gathered beneath silk canopies at the Hanyang Botanical Estate. Crystal chandeliers hung from ancient oak trees. Orchestras played softly beside cascading waterfalls of white roses. Yet in the midst of such breathtaking beauty, one man sat completely alone. Kang Min-jae, Korea's youngest billionaire. The man newspapers called the Silent Monarch. He had refused every plate of food offered to him that afternoon. Every glass of champagne. Every attempt at conversation. Until a Nigerian woman in a simple sage green dress approached his table. She carried nothing but a small ceramic plate. And a slice of homemade pie. "You haven't eaten all day," she said softly. "This might help." He looked up. Their eyes met. And something in his chest, something he had buried years ago, stirred dangerously. He accepted the plate. The entire terrace fell silent. Because Kang Min-jae never accepted anything from strangers. Sometimes love begins not with grand gestures, but with the quiet courage to offer kindness to someone the world has taught to expect none. Please like, share and subscribe. The morning had begun with chaos. Zainab Adebayo stood in her small countryside kitchen, flour dusting her forearms, watching the sunrise paint the Nigerian hills in shades of amber and rose. Her grandmother's recipe book lay open beside her. The pages were yellowed with age, stained with decades of love. Mama's cinnamon honey pie. It was the recipe her grandmother had taught her before passing away 3 years ago. The same recipe Zainab baked whenever she needed to feel close to home. Today she would share it with strangers. The charity cultural festival at Hanyang Botanical Estate was unlike anything Zainab had ever attended. She had been invited as a cultural ambassador, a representative of Nigerian heritage and cuisine, after her small home-based dessert business had caught the attention of the event's organizers. They had seen photographs of her work online. Intricate pastries inspired by African patterns. Cakes infused with flavors most Koreans had never experienced. Hibiscus. Palm wine reduction. Roasted plantain cream. But today, Zainab had chosen simplicity. She had baked her grandmother's pie. As some things could not be improved, only honored. The drive from her rented cottage to the Hanyang Botanical Estate took 40 minutes through winding mountain roads. Zainab's friend Amara had insisted on driving. "You're too nervous," Amara had laughed. "You'll crash into a tree." "I'm not nervous. Your hands are shaking." Zainab looked down. Her friend was right. "It's just..." Zainab exhaled slowly. "I've never been around this many wealthy people before. What if I say something wrong? What if they think I don't belong?" Amara reached over and squeezed her hand. "Zainab, you've built a business from nothing. You've survived things that would have broken other people. You belong wherever you choose to stand." Zainab smiled softly. But the knot in her stomach remained. The Hanyang Botanical Estate was more beautiful than any photograph could capture. Ancient stone pathways curved through gardens of chrysanthemums, their petals catching the light like scattered jewels. Weeping willows draped over a crystalline lake. Silk pavilions dotted the landscape, each one housing different cultural displays. And everywhere, there was wealth. Women in designer gowns floated past like living paintings. Men in tailored suits discussed business deals worth more than Zainab's entire village. The air smelled of jasmine. Of money. Of power. Zainab clutched her ceramic pie dish closer. "You've got this," Amara whispered before disappearing to set up her own cultural display across the garden. Zainab found her designated table near the lake's edge. A small wooden sign read, "Nigerian Heritage Cuisine." She arranged her items carefully. Small samples of chin-chin. Bottles of zobo drink. And in the center, her grandmother's pie. Whole. Uncut. Waiting. The afternoon passed in a blur of curious faces. Some guests approached eagerly, tasting her offerings with genuine delight. Others glanced at her table and walked past without stopping. Zainab didn't mind. She had learned long ago that not everyone would appreciate what she had to offer. And that was acceptable. Her worth was not determined by approval. By 3 o'clock the festival had reached its peak. Musicians played traditional Korean instruments near the main pavilion. Children ran through flower beds, their laughter echoing across the water. But Zainab's attention was drawn elsewhere. To a man sitting alone. 50 meters away, beneath a canopy of white roses. He sat at a private table, separated from the crowds by an invisible barrier of silence. His posture was perfect. His suit was immaculate, black, tailored, probably worth more than Zainab's entire wardrobe combined. His features were striking. Sharp jawline, black hair styled with effortless precision, eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. He was beautiful, and he was completely, utterly alone. Zainab watched him for nearly an hour. She didn't mean to stare, but something about him pulled at her. Servers approached his table repeatedly. Each time they offered plates of exquisite food. Lobster, Wagyu beef, delicate pastries from Seoul's finest patisseries. Each time he refused. Not rudely. He simply shook his head. Once, silently. And the servers retreated as though they had been dismissed by a king. By 5 o'clock, Zainab had counted 17 attempts. 17 refusals. The man had not eaten a single thing. But the question burrowed into her mind and refused to leave. She thought of her grandmother. Of the way the old woman would have looked at this scene. A man who refuses food is a man carrying a burden too heavy to taste sweetness, Nana would have said. Feed his body. Perhaps his soul will follow. Before Zainab could stop herself, she was cutting a slice of her grandmother's pie. The walk across the garden felt endless. Each step brought her closer to the stranger's table. Each step amplified the whispers around her. Who is she? Does she know who that is? She can't possibly be approaching him. Zainab ignored them all. She had spent years ignoring voices that told her she didn't belong. This was no different. The man's security detail noticed her first. 2 massive figures in dark suits stepped forward, their expressions hostile. Ma'am, this area is restricted. Zainab stopped. But she didn't retreat. I'm not here to disturb him, she said calmly. I just noticed he hasn't eaten all day. I wanted to offer. Mr. Kong does not accept unsolicited. Let her through. The voice came from behind the guards. But quiet. Carrying an authority that required no volume. The guards parted immediately. And for the first time, Zainab found herself face to face with the stranger. His eyes were darker than she had expected. Not brown. Not black. Something in between, like the sky before a storm breaks. They held no warmth. No hostility either. Just observation. As though he was reading her entire life story in the space between heartbeats. Zainab's mouth went dry. She had prepared a small speech in her head during the walkover. Something polite and professional. But standing here under the weight of his gaze, every rehearsed word vanished. You haven't eaten, she finally said. Her voice was softer than she intended. He tilted his head slightly. The movement was almost imperceptible. I'm not hungry. With respect, Zainab replied, that's exactly what someone who needs to eat would say. Something flickered in his expression. Too fast to identify. Gone before she could name it. And what makes you qualified to determine what I need? The question was not aggressive, but it was a test. Zainab recognized the tone. She had encountered powerful men before. Men who expected everyone around them to cower. She had never cowered. I'm not qualified, she admitted honestly. But I know what it looks like when someone is carrying something heavy. And I know that my grandmother's pie has never failed to make things feel lighter. Even if only for a moment. She placed the ceramic plate on his table. A single slice of cinnamon honey pie. Golden brown crust. Steam still rising faintly from its surface. The man stared at it. Then at her. His expression remained unreadable. But something in the air shifted. The entire terrace had fallen silent. Zainab could feel dozens of eyes burning into her back. She heard whispers spreading like wildfire. Did she just? He'll never accept it. She has no idea who she's dealing with. Zainab ignored them all. She had done what felt right. Whatever happened next was beyond her control. It's homemade, she added quietly. No allergens except wheat and honey. Just in case you were concerned about. His hand moved. Slowly. Deliberately. He picked up the small fork she had placed beside the plate. Cut a piece of the pie. And brought it to his lips. The silence around them deepened into something almost sacred. Zainab watched him chew. His expression gave nothing away. But he did not stop. He took another bite. Then another. When the slice was finished, he set down the fork with the precision of a man who controlled every movement he made. "What's your name?" The question caught her off guard. "Zainab," she said. "Zainab Adebayo." He studied her for a long moment. "Thank you, Zainab Adebayo." 4 words. Spoken without warmth. Without inflection. But somehow they felt significant. Like the first crack in a dam that had held for years. Zainab nodded, unsure what else to say. She turned to leave. "Wait." His voice stopped her mid-step. She looked back. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a card. Simple black cardstock with silver embossing. "If you ever need anything." Zainab stared at the card. Kang Min-jae, Pyo Hanyang Industries. Beneath the name was a phone number. Nothing else. She took the card slowly. "Thank you. But I don't need anything." For the first time, something almost like surprise crossed his features. It vanished instantly. "Keep it anyway," he said. It wasn't a request. Zainab tucked the card into her dress pocket without arguing. Some battles weren't worth fighting. Some were. She hadn't yet figured out which category this man belonged to. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" Amara's voice was somewhere between awe and horror. They were sitting in Amara's car, parked outside the botanical estate, the setting sun casting long shadows across the dashboard. Zainab shrugged. "I gave a hungry man some pie. You gave Kang Min-jae pie. Is that supposed to mean something?" Amara stared at her. "Zainab. Pull out your phone. Google that name. Right now." Zainab rolled her eyes but complied. She typed the name into the search bar. The results loaded instantly. Headlines. Photographs. Financial reports. Kang Min-jae, Korea's youngest billionaire. The silent monarch of Hanyang Industries. Inside the mysterious empire of the man who never speaks. Zainab scrolled slowly. Her heart began beating faster. The articles painted a portrait of a man who had inherited a corporate empire at 23 after the tragic deaths of both parents. A man who had transformed that empire into something unprecedented. Technology. Real estate. Pharmaceuticals. Kpop. His net worth was estimated at $14 billion. But that wasn't what made Zainab's breath catch. It was the other headlines. The ones that carried darker undertones. Kang Industries. Legitimate business or something more sinister? The secret Seoul's elite won't discuss. Why does everyone fear the silent monarch? Zainab clicked on one article. Discussed rumors. Allegations that had never been proven. Whispers that Kang Min-jae controlled more than just legitimate businesses. That beneath the polished surface of Hanyang Industries lay connections to Korea's most powerful criminal networks. Connections that had existed for generations. No formal charges have ever been filed. No evidence has ever surfaced. Yet those who cross Kang Min-jae have a peculiar habit of disappearing from public life. Businesses fail overnight. Reputations crumble. People vanish. Coincidence? Perhaps. But in Seoul's underworld, there is only one name spoken in absolute silence. The silent monarch. Zainab set down her phone. Her hands were trembling. "You gave pie to a mob boss," Amara whispered. "We don't know that he's..." "Zainab. Everyone knows. They just can't prove it." Silence filled the car. Outside, birds sang in the fading light. Inside, something heavier settled. "He seemed lonely," Zainab finally said. Amara laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. "Lonely? That man could buy this entire country. He's not lonely. He's dangerous." Zainab didn't argue. But she couldn't shake the memory of his eyes. Dark. Hungry in a way that had nothing to do with food. She thought of the card in her pocket. If you ever need anything. She wouldn't use it. She couldn't use it. Whatever Kang Min-jae was, billionaire, so criminal, he existed in a world she had no business entering. She would forget this day. Move forward. Return to her quiet life of baking and volunteering and saving money to eventually open her own small shop. This was an interesting story to tell someday. Nothing more. 3 days later, her entire life changed. The knock came at 7 in the morning. Zainab was in her kitchen, kneading dough for a client order, when the sharp sound echoed through her cottage. She wiped her hands on her apron and opened the door. A man stood on her porch. Middle-aged. wearing a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Miss Zainab Adebayo? Yes. My name is Secretary Han. I represent Mr. Kong Min-jae. The name hit her like cold water. How did you find my address? Secretary Han's expression remained neutral. Mr. Kong has resources. That wasn't an answer. But somehow it was. What does he want? Mr. Kong requests your presence for dinner this evening. A car will arrive at 6 o'clock to collect you. Zainab blinked. I'm sorry, what? Dinner. This evening. 6 o'clock. I heard you. I just don't understand why. For the first time, something like discomfort crossed the secretary's face. Mr. Kong does not typically explain his reasons. Well, I don't typically have dinner with billionaires I've met once. I understand your hesitation. However, I would strongly encourage you to accept. Is that a threat? No, Miss Adebayo. Secretary Han's voice softened slightly. It's an observation. Mr. Kong has never, in all the years I have served him, requested a second meeting with someone he encountered by chance. Never. The fact that he is making this request suggests something significant. Zainab stared at him. Her mind was racing. Every rational instinct told her to refuse. This was insane. Potentially dangerous. Definitely inappropriate. But beneath the fear there was something else. Curiosity. The same curiosity that had driven her across that garden 3 days ago. If I refuse? Nothing will happen. Mr. Kong respects personal autonomy. Zainab considered this. Fine. The word left her mouth before she could stop it. Secretary Han's expression flickered. Was that relief? The car will arrive at 6. Dress code is formal but not extravagant. Mr. Kong appreciates authenticity. He bowed slightly and departed. Zainab closed the door, leaned against it, and wondered what in the world she had just agreed to. The car that arrived was not a car. It was a statement. A sleek black Rolls-Royce with windows tinted so dark they seemed to absorb light itself. Zainab had spent hours agonizing over what to wear. She finally settled on a deep burgundy dress she had brought from Nigeria. Simple, elegant, hand-embroidered by her mother's friend from Lagos. It wasn't designer. It wasn't expensive. But it was beautiful. And it was hers. The driver, a silent man with watchful eyes, held the door open as she climbed inside. The interior smelled of leather and sandalwood. Classical music played softly from hidden speakers. Zainab tried to control her breathing. She failed. They drove for 45 minutes. Away from the city. Into the mountains. The landscape transformed. Urban sprawl giving way to forests, then to manicured estates, then to something even more breathtaking. A private road curved through ancient pine trees. And at its end stood a house that belonged in a different century. Traditional Korean architecture blended with modern glass and steel. Stone walls surrounded courtyards filled with carefully arranged gardens. Waterfalls cascaded over black rock formations. The entire property sat on a cliff overlooking a valley shrouded in evening mist. Mr. Kang's private residence, the driver said. Zainab could only nod. She was escorted through the main entrance by a woman in traditional hanbok. The interior was as stunning as the exterior. Dark wood. Paper screens. Modern art pieces that probably cost more than everything Zainab had ever owned combined. But it was cold. Beautiful. But empty. Like a museum. Or a mausoleum. She was led to a private dining room overlooking the valley. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the sunset. A single table was set with exquisite precision. 2 chairs. 2 place settings. Candles flickered softly. And at the head of the table stood Kong Min-jae. He looked different tonight. His suit was still impeccable, midnight blue this time, but something about his posture seemed almost uncertain. It vanished the moment he saw her. His expression hardened into the familiar mask of control. Miss Adebayo. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me. Though I'm still not entirely sure why. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. Please. Sit. She did. Servants appeared, silent, efficient, and began serving courses. Korean dishes Zainab couldn't name. Each one more beautiful than the last. But she barely tasted any of it. Her attention was fixed on the man across from her. You're studying me, he said eventually. It wasn't an accusation. Just an observation. You're hard to read, Zainab replied honestly. Most people find that unsettling. Most people probably don't offer you pie. Something crossed his features. It might have been amusement. No. They don't. Silence stretched between them. Comfortable in a way that surprised Zainab. Why did you invite me here? She finally asked. He set down his chopsticks. Met her eyes directly. I've spent the past 3 days trying to answer that question myself. Zainab waited. The pie was exceptional. Thank you. But that's not why I remembered you. Then why? He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was lower. Softer. You looked at me like I was a person. Zainab frowned. What else would I look at you like? A target. A resource. A threat. A means to an end. He paused. That's how everyone looks at me. That's how everyone has looked at me since I was old enough to understand what my name means. The words hung in the air. Heavy with years of loneliness. Zainab felt something shift in her chest. Sympathy. Maybe something more. I didn't know who you were, she admitted. When I approached you, I just saw a man who looked like he was carrying something heavy. And now that you know who I am? She considered the question carefully. I think you're still carrying something heavy. The only difference is now I understand why no one else has noticed. His expression didn't change. But something in his eyes did. They talked for hours. About her grandmother. About his parents. About what it meant to build something from nothing. About what it meant to inherit everything and still feel empty. He didn't mention his criminal connections. She didn't ask. Some conversations required trust earned over time. Not demanded in a single evening. By midnight the candles had burned low. The valley below was shrouded in darkness. And Zainab realized she didn't want to leave. I should go, she said reluctantly. I have orders to fill tomorrow. He nodded. But he didn't stand. May I see you again? The question was quiet. Almost vulnerable. From anyone else it might have seemed ordinary. From Kang Min-jae, the silent monarch, it felt like a confession. Yes, Zainab said. She didn't know if it was wise. He didn't care. Some doors once opened could not be closed. The next few weeks passed in a blur of flowers and late-night phone calls. Kang Min-jae did not do anything halfway. The morning after their dinner, Zainab woke to find her entire front porch covered in white roses. Not a dozen. Not even 100. Thousands. The entire garden resembled a snowfall of petals. Attached was a simple note. Thank you for seeing me. MJ. She called him that evening. You're insane. Some would agree. Where am I supposed to put thousands of roses? I'll have someone collect them if they're unwanted. Zainab looked at the garden through her window. The petals glowed silver in the moonlight. Don't you dare. She could have sworn she heard him smile. The phone calls became a nightly ritual. He would call at exactly 10 o'clock. Sometimes they talked for minutes. Sometimes for hours. He told her about his work. The endless meetings. The tedious negotiations. The weight of being responsible for thousands of employees. He told him about her baking. The joy of creating something beautiful. The satisfaction of watching strangers taste her food and smile. They discussed everything. Politics. Philosophy. The differences between Korean and Nigerian funeral traditions. The best way to prepare rice. Mundane things. Sacred things. Things that revealed who they were beneath the surfaces they presented to the world. Zainab found herself waiting for his calls. Counting down the hours. She told herself it wasn't romantic. That she was simply fascinated by someone so different from herself. But late at night, when his voice rumbled through her phone like distant thunder, she knew she was lying. The first warning came 3 weeks after their dinner. Zainab was walking home from the market when she noticed a car following her. But expensive. Not one she recognized. She quickened her pace. The car matched her speed. Her heart began racing. She ducked into a narrow alley, a shortcut she knew from years of wandering these streets. The car couldn't follow. She ran. When she finally reached her cottage, she locked every door and window. Then she called Min-jae. Someone was following me. Silence. Described the car. She did. More silence. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Colder. Harder. The warmth she had grown accustomed to was gone. I'll handle it. Min-jae, what's going on? Nothing you need to worry about. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give right now. Pause. Please trust me. He wanted to argue, to demand explanations, but something in his tone stopped her. Okay, she whispered. Lock your doors. Don't go anywhere alone. I'm sending someone. Sending someone? The line went dead. 20 minutes later, 2 cars arrived outside her cottage. Men in dark suits emerged. They positioned themselves around her property like statues. They didn't speak. They didn't move. They just watched. Zainab stood at her window staring. She had wanted answers. Instead she had more questions. And the growing sense that she had wandered into something far deeper than she understood. The man who had followed her was found 3 days later. Zainab only learned this because Min Jae told her during one of their phone calls. His voice flat, emotionless. He won't bother you again. What did you do to him? Silence. Min Jae. What did you do? He was encouraged to leave the country. Encouraged. Permanently. A chill ran down Zainab's spine. She thought of the articles she had read. Those who cross Kong Min Jae have a peculiar habit of disappearing. Is he alive? The pause before his answer was a heartbeat too long. He's alive. He'll recover. Zainab exhaled. But the relief was incomplete. Who was he? Someone sent by people who want to hurt me. Why would hurting me hurt you? Another pause. This one heavier. Because you matter to me. The words landed like stones in still water. Ripples spreading outward. Changing everything they touched. Min Jae. I didn't mean for this to happen. His voice was raw in a way she had never heard before. I didn't mean to care about you. I didn't mean to put you in danger. I thought I could keep you separate from everything else. I was wrong. What are you saying? I'm saying you should walk away. You should forget you ever met me. You should. No. The word was sharp. Definitive. Zainab. No. You don't get to make that choice for me. Her voice trembled, but her resolve did not. Whatever this is, whatever you are, I'm not running. Not unless you tell me the whole truth. Not unless you trust me enough to explain. Silence stretched between them. Endless. Excruciating. Tomorrow, he finally said. Come to the house tomorrow. I'll tell you everything. 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 She didn't sleep that night. His estate looked different in daylight. Less dramatic. More vulnerable. Zainab was escorted to a different room this time. A private study lined with books and photographs. Min Jae was standing by the window when she arrived. He didn't turn around. My father was not a good man. The words were spoken to the glass. To the valley below. To no one and everyone at once. Zainab remained silent. Some stories needed to unfold without interruption. He built this empire on blood. On fear. On the bones of anyone who stood in his way. Min Jae's voice was steady, too steady. He ran the most powerful criminal syndicate in Korea. Had for generations. It was a family legacy, passed down like a curse. He finally turned. His eyes were hollow. When I was 19, he ordered the execution of 12 men who had betrayed him. He made me watch. He said I needed to understand what leadership required. Zainab's stomach churned. When I was 23, he and my mother were murdered. Internal rivals who thought they could seize control. A bitter smile crossed his face. They underestimated me. Everyone did. What happened to them? I eliminated them. No hesitation. No remorse. Every single one. Took 2 years. And when it was finished, I became what my father always wanted me to be. He stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the weight he carried. Written in every line of his face. I'm not a good man, Zainab. I have done things that would horrify you. I have ordered things that would make you sick. I have become exactly what I swore I would never become. Tears burned in her eyes. Not for herself. For him. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what you're choosing. His voice cracked just barely. Because if you stay, you need to understand what I am. Not who I pretend to be. What I actually am. She stared at him. At the man who had accepted her pie. Who called her every night at 10. Who sent thousands of roses because she had looked at him like he was human. You're not your father, she said quietly. I'm worse. He enjoyed what he was. I despise it. And I do it anyway. Then stop. It's not that simple. It never is. But you have a choice. You've always had a choice. He shook his head. If I step away, they'll kill everyone I care about. They'll burn everything I've built. The legitimate businesses, the charities, the hospitals. They'll destroy it all just to prove a point. Who is they? The council. The men who share power with me. They've tolerated my reforms because I'm useful. But if I show weakness... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Zainab understood. He was trapped. A monster by necessity. A prisoner in a kingdom he never wanted to rule. She crossed the distance between them. Took his hands in hers. Then we find another way. There is no other way. There's always another way. Her voice was fierce now. You think you're alone in this? You think I don't understand what it means to carry something impossible? I've buried everyone I love. My grandmother. My parents. My sister. I know what it feels like to have the world take everything and keep demanding more. Tears were streaming down her face now. She didn't wipe them away. But I also know what it feels like to find something worth fighting for. Something worth changing for. And I think I know that you found that too. When you accepted my pie. When you called me that first night. When you sent those ridiculous flowers. A sound escaped him, half laugh, half sob. You're insane. Probably. You should run. Probably. Why won't you? She looked up at him. At the shadows in his eyes. At the man hiding beneath the monster. Because you deserve someone who stays. He stared at her. Something broke in his expression. Something that had held together for far too long. And then he was pulling her closer. Not roughly. Not desperately. Gently. Like she was something precious. Something he was terrified of breaking. His forehead pressed against hers. His breath was ragged. I will destroy anyone who touches you, he whispered. Anyone who even thinks about hurting you. I will burn this entire country down if that's what it takes to keep you safe. I know. Does that frighten you? She considered the question. The honest answer was complicated. Yes, she admitted. But not enough to make me leave. He closed his eyes. And for the first time since he was 19 years old, Kang Min-jae allowed himself to be held. The council meeting was held 3 days later. Min-jae sat at the head of a long obsidian table, his expression carved from stone. Around him sat the 12 most powerful men in Korea's underworld. Bankers who laundered billions. Politicians who wrote laws to protect criminals. Military officers who looked the other way. And Kwon Tae-hyun. His second in command. His oldest ally. The only person in this room he had ever trusted. There are rumors, Kwon said, his voice carefully neutral. About the Nigerian woman. Min-jae's expression didn't change. What rumors? That she has influence over you. That she's compromising your judgment. And who started these rumors? Kwon hesitated. Does it matter? Yes. The room fell silent. Min-jae let the silence stretch. Let it become uncomfortable. Let it remind everyone present exactly who sat at the head of this table. The woman is none of your concern, he said finally. My personal life has no bearing on our operations. With respect, another councilman interjected, a fat man named Director Yoon. Everything about your life has bearing on our operations. You are the face of this organization. Your vulnerabilities become our vulnerabilities. Are you suggesting she's a vulnerability? I'm suggesting that emotions cloud judgment. And judgment is all that stands between us and destruction. Min-jae studied the man. Director Yoon had always been ambitious. Always pushing boundaries. Always testing. If anyone in this room makes a move against her, Min-jae said calmly, I will personally ensure that their death takes 6 months. And their families will watch. The temperature in the room dropped. No one spoke. No one moved. Min-jae stood. This meeting is adjourned. He left without looking back. But he felt the eyes following him. Felt the calculations being made. The council was patient. But patience had limits. And someone in that room had just decided that Zainab Adebayo needed to disappear. The photograph arrived on a Tuesday. Plain envelope. No return address. Zainab opened it while standing in her kitchen, still covered in flour from the morning's baking. What she saw made her blood run cold. It was a picture of Min-jae, standing in an alley. His sleeves rolled up, revealing the intricate tattoo that covered his right arm. A magnificent dragon twisted through clouds and waves. Tigers prowled across muscle and bone. Red spider lilies bloomed in the negative space. She had glimpsed the tattoo before. Once, when his collar had shifted during their dinner. She had asked about it. He had changed the subject. Now she understood why. Because in the photograph, Min-jae was holding a gun. And at his feet was a body. Her phone rang. She didn't answer. It rang again. And again. Finally she picked up. Zainab. His voice. Concerned. Careful. Secretary Han said you weren't answering. Is everything? I received a photograph. Silence. What photograph? You know what photograph? More silence. When he spoke again his voice was different. Resigned. I can explain. Can you? That was 3 years ago. He had ordered the execution of my entire security team. 17 men. Some of them had families. Children. He was going to. I don't want to hear this. Zainab, please. You killed someone. He was a monster. And what does that make you? The question hung in the air. Poisonous. I'm forgiving. I told you what I was, he said quietly. I told you everything. You told me about your father. About the council. About the trap you're in. Her voice was shaking now. You didn't tell me you still. She couldn't finish. I do what I have to do, he said. To protect the people I care about. To keep the organization from becoming what it was under my father. Every death I've ordered has been necessary. Every single one. How can you know that? Because I've spent years ensuring it. That's not good enough. I know. Then why? Because there is no good enough. Not in this world. Not in my position. His voice broke. I told you to run. I told you this would destroy you. I told you. You should have tried harder. Would it have worked? She couldn't answer. Because they both knew it wouldn't have. She had been falling for him since the moment he accepted her pie. And falling didn't leave room for reason. She hung up. Threw her phone across the room. Collapsed onto her kitchen floor. And wept. 3 weeks passed. Zainab didn't answer his calls. Didn't respond to his messages. Didn't acknowledge the gifts that kept arriving. Flowers, books, handwritten letters she couldn't bring herself to burn. She buried herself in work. Baked until her arms ached. Delivered orders with smiles that never reached her eyes. Mar noticed. You look terrible. Thanks. I mean it. When did you last sleep? I sleep. Lying on the kitchen floor crying doesn't count. Zainab didn't respond. What could she say? That she had fallen in love with a murderer? That she missed him so desperately it felt like a physical wound? That every time she closed her eyes she saw his face, not the cold mask he showed the world, but the vulnerability he had revealed only to her? Whatever happened, Amara said gently, you can't run from it forever. I'm not running. Then what are you doing? Zainab stared at her hands. Still stained with flour. Still trembling. I'm trying to figure out if love is enough. Amara didn't have an answer. Neither did she. The break-in happened on a Thursday. Zainab came home to find her front door open. Her heart stopped. She should have run. Called the police. Called Min-jae. Instead she walked inside. Her cottage was destroyed. Furniture overturned. Dishes shattered. And on her kitchen table, placed with deliberate care, was a single red spider lily. With it was a note. He can't protect you forever. She called him. He answered before the first ring finished. Zainab. Her name on his lips. Relief and agony combined. Someone broke into my house. She heard movement. Orders being given. Engines starting. I'm sending people. Don't move. Don't touch anything. I'll be there in. I'm coming to you. Silence. What? I'm not waiting here. I'm coming to you. She could hear his hesitation. The calculation. The fear. The estate is the safest place for you, he finally said. Secretary Han will arrange transport. No. I'm driving myself. Zainab. I need to do this myself. I need to. She couldn't finish. But he understood. Drive carefully. I'll be waiting. The drive took 90 minutes. Every shadow seemed threatening. Every car behind her felt like a pursuer. By the time she reached the estate gates, she was shaking so violently she could barely grip the steering wheel. He was standing in the courtyard when she arrived. Not Secretary Han. Not guards. Him. She barely had time to step out of the car before he was there. His arms wrapped around her. Pulled her against his chest. She felt his heartbeat. Rapid. Desperate. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered into her hair. "I thought. I'm here. You came back. I never really left." He pulled back just enough to look at her. His eyes were red. Had he been crying? Had the silent monarch, the man who never showed emotion, been crying? "The council made their move," he said, his voice hardening. "They wanted to frighten you. To prove you're a liability. What are you going to do?" "What I should have done years ago." He saw it then. In his eyes. The decision had already been made. "I'm ending this. All of it. The council. The syndicate. Everything my father built. They'll try to kill you. Let them try. Min-jae." He cupped her face in his hands. His palms were warm. Steadier than they had any right to be. "I have spent my entire life becoming what other people needed me to be. The heir. The leader. The monster." He paused. "But when I'm with you, I remember who I wanted to be. Before all of this. Before I became something unrecognizable." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I don't want you to die for me. I'd die for far less." He smiled. Small, broken, beautiful. "But I'd rather live for you instead." She kissed him. Not gently. Not carefully. With everything she had been holding back. Every fear. Every doubt. Every desperate, impossible hope. He kissed her back. And for one perfect moment, nothing else existed. They spent the night talking. Not about the council. Not about the danger. About everything else. About the names they would give their children. About the house they would build. Somewhere warm, somewhere the sun stayed late. About growing old together. About forgiveness. About choosing each other every day even when it was hard. "I never believed in love," he admitted, his head resting in her lap as dawn began to lighten the sky. "I thought it was weakness. A tool people used to manipulate each other. And now." He looked up at her. "Now I think it's the only thing worth fighting for." She smiled. Soft. Said. Hopeful. "Then fight. And come back to me." He took her hand. Pressed his lips to her palm. "Always." The council meeting was scheduled for noon. Min-jae had requested an emergency session. He told the council it concerned the organization's future. He didn't tell them he was about to burn everything they had built. As he dressed that morning, Zainab watched from the doorway. His movements were precise. Controlled. Military in their efficiency. His suit was black. His expression was blank. But when he turned to look at her, his eyes held everything. Love. Fear. Determination. "If I don't come back. You'll come back. But if I don't, then I'll find whoever's responsible." Her voice was steady. "And I'll make them regret it." He stared at her. "You're terrifying. I learned from the best." He left at 11. She stood at the window watching his convoy disappear into the mountains. Something inside her was screaming. "Follow him. Don't let him go alone. Don't let him." But she stayed. Because he had asked her to stay. Because sometimes trust meant respecting choices you couldn't control. Because sometimes love meant waiting. Even when every second felt like dying. The conference room sat 60 meters beneath Hanyang Industries headquarters. No windows. No natural light. Only the cold glow of recessed lighting reflecting off obsidian walls and a table carved from a single slab of black marble. 12 chairs. 12 men. And at the head Kang Min-jae. He arrived exactly at noon. Not a second early. Not a second late. Punctuality was a weapon. It told everyone in the room that he controlled time itself. The council members were already seated. Director Yoon occupied his usual position at the far end. Bulky, sweating, his fingers drumming against the table in a rhythm that betrayed his nervousness. General Shin sat to the left. Ramrod straight, military decorations hidden beneath a civilian suit that fit poorly over decades of combat muscle. Prosecutor Beck, the man who ensured legal investigations never reached their conclusion, polished his glasses with methodical slowness. And beside Min-jae's empty chair sat Kwon Tae-hyun, his second in command, his oldest ally, the man who had stood beside him during every war, every betrayal, every blood-soaked night that had built this empire. Kwon's expression was unreadable. That more than anything troubled Min-jae, as he could always read Kwon. Always. Till now. Min-jae unbuttoned his jacket as he sat. The movement was casual, deliberate. It caused his sleeve to shift slightly, revealing the edge of the dragon tattoo coiling around his forearm, black scales and crimson fire disappearing beneath Italian fabric. Every man at the table noticed. Every man understood the reminder. That tattoo was not decoration. It was a declaration. I am the one who rules here. Gentlemen, Min-jae began. His voice filled the room without effort. Thank you for accommodating this emergency session. Director Yoon leaned forward. You said this concerns the organization's future. It does. Then speak. We're listening. Min-jae studied each face around the table, reading micro-expressions, cataloging loyalties, identifying threats. For 5 years, he said slowly, I have worked to transform this organization, to move us away from the violence and brutality that defined my father's era, to build legitimate enterprises that generate more revenue than our illegal operations ever could. And you've been remarkably successful, Prosecutor Beck said carefully. No one disputes that. Good. Then you'll understand what I'm about to propose. He paused. Let the silence build. Let anticipation become anxiety. I'm dissolving the council. The room erupted. Not with noise. These were men who had survived decades in the shadows by controlling their reactions. But the energy shifted. Chairs creaked as bodies tensed. Hands moved beneath the table. Eyes darted sideways. Director Yoon's drumming stopped. You can't be serious, he said. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. This council has existed for 40 years. Your father established. My father established a kingdom built on murder, extortion, and fear. I'm offering you something better. Legitimate positions within Hanyang Industries. Full amnesty for past activities. Financial packages generous enough to ensure your grandchildren never need to work. And if we refuse? General Shin asked quietly. Min-jae met his eyes. Then you'll be treated as enemies of my organization. And you know how I treat enemies. Silence. Absolute. Suffocating. Kwon Tae-hyun hadn't spoken. Hadn't moved. His eyes were fixed on a point somewhere beyond the table. Somewhere Min-jae couldn't reach. This is about the woman, Director Yoon spat. This is about that foreign girl who's corrupted your... Careful. One word. Spoken softly. But it landed like a blade against skin. Director Yoon's mouth snapped shut. This is about survival, Min-jae continued. The world is changing. Law enforcement is evolving. International cooperation is tightening. The old ways are dying. We adapt or we perish. I am choosing adaptation. You're choosing weakness, Director Yoon hissed. I'm choosing legacy. The question is whether you're intelligent enough to do the same. He stood. You have 72 hours to decide. After that, the offer expires. He walked toward the door. And gentlemen? He paused without turning around. If anyone makes another move against the woman I love, the offer expires immediately. For everyone. The door closed behind him. And in the silence that followed, 12 men began calculating. Some calculated survival. Others calculated war. Kwon Tae-hyun found Director Yoon in a private room 40 minutes after the meeting. The fat man was pouring whiskey with unsteady hands. He's lost his mind, Yoon muttered. Completely lost his. He's in love, Kwon said quietly. Yoon looked up startled. Kwon rarely spoke unless his words carried weight. Love is a disease, Yoon spat. It destroys judgment. Destroys empires. His father understood that. His father is dead. And if we follow Min-jae down this path we will be too. Yoon's eyes narrowed. You've known him longest. You understand what needs to happen. Kwon was silent for a long moment. His face was a mask of carved jade, beautiful, cold, impenetrable. What exactly are you proposing? Remove the girl. Without her influence he'll return to reason. He warned us what would happen if. Not kill her. Remove her. Send her back to Africa. Make it clear that staying in Korea means death. Yoon took a long swallow of whiskey. Without her the disease fades. He remembers who he is. What he owes us. Kwon studied the older man. And if he discovers our involvement? He won't. Not if we're careful. Yoon leaned closer. I have men who can make it look like she left voluntarily. A forged letter. Evidence of debts back home. A family emergency. He'll be heartbroken, but he'll survive. He's survived worse. Kwon said nothing. The silence stretched like a wire pulled taut. Then he nodded. Once. Do it quietly. No violence. No traces. Yoon smiled. A grotesque thing like a wound splitting open. Naturally. What director Yoon didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that Kwon Taehyun had already made his own calculations. And they had nothing to do with protecting the council. 3 days after the council meeting, Zainab was still at Min Jae's estate. He had insisted. She had resisted. He had compromised by giving her an entire wing of the house. Private, furnished with everything she needed, including a professional kitchen where she could continue her baking business remotely. You're keeping me prisoner in luxury, she teased one evening over dinner. I'm keeping you alive. Those aren't the same thing. In my world they are. She set down her chopsticks and studied him. He had been different since the council meeting. More vigilant. More controlled. The warmth that had begun emerging during their late-night conversations had retreated behind walls of iron and discipline. She could see the soldier replacing the man. And it terrified her. Talk to me, she said softly. About what? About whatever's eating you alive right now. He looked at her for a long time. The candlelight played across his features, sharpening his jaw, deepening the shadows beneath his cheekbones. Kwon, he finally said. Your second in command? My oldest friend. The only person who was there when my parents died. The only person who helped me rebuild. He paused. Something is wrong. I can feel it. Wrong how? He's too quiet. Too agreeable. Kwon argues with me constantly. It's how our relationship works. He challenges, I decide. But since the council meeting he's been cooperative. Exactly. And that scares you. It terrifies me. Zainab reached across the table and took his hand. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. He laced his fingers through hers. My instincts also told me to stay away from you. And look how well that turned out. The faintest smile crossed his lips. Fragile. Beautiful. Gone too quickly. Later that night, long after Zainab had fallen asleep in her wing of the house, Min Jae stood in his study. Alone. He had removed his jacket. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the upper portion of his tattoo, the dragon's head emerging from his chest, its eyes seeming to glow in the lamplight. Red spider lilies cascaded down his collarbone like drops of blood. He was staring at a photograph. His parents. Taken 3 months before their murder. His mother was smiling. A rare, luminous expression that he could barely remember seeing in person. His father stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder. Protective. Controlling. The 3 emotions that had defined their relationship. Am I becoming you? The question haunted him. He looked down at the tattoo visible on his forearm. The tiger prowling across his muscle. The mountain and smoke motifs connecting the design. Korean calligraphy hidden within the artwork. Loyalty. Honor. Silence. Control. Words he had lived by. Words that were now choking him. Because Zainab didn't need a man who embodied loyalty to an empire of blood. She needed a man who was loyal to her. To their future. To something better than what he had inherited. He set down the photograph. Picked up his phone. Dialed a number he hadn't used in 3 years. Agent Park. Skong Min Jae. I need to meet. Off the record. The voice on the other end was cautious. Regarding. I'm ready to cooperate. A long pause. When? Now. 4 days after the council meeting, the 72-hour deadline passed. 3 council members accepted Min Jae's offer. 9 refused. The battle lines had been drawn. What Min Jae didn't know was that the real betrayal had nothing to do with the council. It happened on a Saturday morning. Zainab was baking in the estate's kitchen. Her safe space, the one room where the marble and glass and priceless art faded away, and she was simply herself again. Flour on her hands. Music from her phone. Afrobeats playing softly. The scent of cinnamon and butter filling the air. She was making another pie. Not for any special reason. Just because her hands needed to create something beautiful. Because in the midst of bodyguards and bulletproof glass and conversations about criminal empires, she needed to remember who she was. A knock at the kitchen door. She looked up. A man stood in the doorway. Handsome. Impeccably dressed. Sharp eyes that carried intelligence and something else. Something calculating. Miss Adebayo? I'm Kwon Taehyun. Min Jae's second in command. Zainab set down her rolling pin. She had never met him in person, but she recognized the name instantly. The friend Min Jae trusted. The friend Min Jae feared was changing. He's mentioned you, she said carefully. Kwon smiled. It was a beautiful smile. Warm. Disarming. Precisely engineered to put people at ease. All terrible things, I'm sure. He stepped into the kitchen. May I? She nodded, though something in her stomach tightened. He sat on a stool at the kitchen island, watching her work with undisguised curiosity. So you're the woman who melted the silent monarch's heart. I offered him pie. I wouldn't call that melting anything. You'd be surprised. I've known Min Jae since we were teenagers. He has never let anyone past his defenses. Not his business partners. Not his allies. Not even me. Kwon's voice softened. And then you walked across a garden with a slice of pie and everything changed. Zainab studied him. He seemed sincere. But Min Jae's warnings echoed in her mind. Something is wrong. Why are you here, Mr. Kwon? Please. Taehyun. Why are you here, Taehyun? His smile faded slightly. Replaced by something heavier. I'm here because I'm worried about him. The path he's chosen, dissolving the council, dismantling the organization. It's suicide. The people he's challenging have resources, connections, military contacts. They will not go quietly. He knows that. Is he? Or has love blinded him to reality? Zainab's jaw tightened. His love hasn't blinded him. It's given him a reason to see clearly for the first time. Kwon regarded her. The warmth in his expression cooled by several degrees. You truly believe that? I do. Then I hope you're right. Because if you're wrong, he will die. And it will be because of you. The words landed like a slap. Zainab felt the blood drain from her face. Kwon stood. I didn't come here to frighten you. I came to warn you. Because despite everything, I still care about him. He paused at the door. Ask yourself something, Miss Adebayo. Is your love worth his life? He left. Zainab stood alone in the kitchen. Her hands were shaking. The pie sat half-finished on the counter. Kwon's words echoed. Is your love worth his life? He didn't know. And that uncertainty was more terrifying than anything she had ever faced. That evening Zainab was quiet. Min Jae noticed immediately. He always noticed. What happened? They were sitting in the garden, the estate's courtyard illuminated by hundreds of paper lanterns that Secretary Han had arranged to mimic the botanical festival where they had first met. A thoughtful gesture. One that should have made her smile. Instead she stared at the lanterns and felt like crying. Kwon came to see me today. Min Jae's entire body went rigid. The transformation was instant. Liquid grace becoming coiled steel. What did he say? That your plan is suicide. That the council will kill you. That it will be because of me. Silence. He's trying to manipulate you. Is he wrong? What? Is he wrong, Min Jae? She turned to face him. Would you be doing this if you hadn't met me? Would you be risking everything, your life, your empire, the lives of everyone who depends on you, if I hadn't walked across that garden? That's not a fair question. It's the only question that matters. He stood. Paced. His hands were clenched at his sides. She could see the tattoo through his open collar, the dragon's head visible, its jaws stretched wide as though preparing to consume everything around it. Before I met you, he said, his voice tight, I was already dying. Not physically, but everything inside me that was human, everything worth preserving, was disintegrating. Day by day, decision by decision. I was becoming my father. He stopped pacing. Faced her. You didn't create this choice. You revealed it. You showed me that another life was possible. That I was possible. And if choosing that life gets you killed, then at least I died choosing something real. Tears spilled down her cheeks. He crossed to her in 2 steps. Knelt before her. Took her hands. Don't let Kwon poison what we have. That's exactly what he wants. Why would he want that? Min Jae's expression darkened. Because I think Kwon has been playing a longer game than any of us realized. What do you mean? I mean that my oldest friend may have become my most dangerous enemy. The confirmation came at midnight. Secretary Han burst into Min Jae's study, his normally composed face ashen. Sir. We intercepted communications between Kwon Tae-hyun and Director Yoon. Min Jae's expression didn't change. But his knuckles whitened around the pen he was holding. Details. They've been planning a coordinated operation. The target is Miss Adebayo. Han swallowed. They intend to remove her from the country. Forged documents. False evidence of criminal activity. If she resists. Han couldn't meet his eyes. Director Yoon has authorized the use of force. The pen snapped in Min Jae's hand. Ink bled across his fingers. He didn't notice. When? Tomorrow night. Min Jae stood slowly. The room felt smaller. Darker. As though his fury was physically displacing the light. Wake the security team. Full mobilization. No one sleeps tonight. Yes, sir. And Han. Sir. Find Kwon Tae-hyun. Sir, he's. Find him. Bring him to me. Alive. Min Jae's voice was barely audible. What happens after that is between us. They came at 3 a.m. Not tomorrow night as the intercepted communications had indicated. Earlier. Because Kwon Tae-hyun was not a fool. He knew his messages would be intercepted. He had counted on it. The false timeline was bait. And Min Jae had taken it. Zainab woke to the sound of shattering glass. Her bedroom window exploded inward. She screamed. Rolled off the bed. Hit the floor as cold mountain air rushed through the broken frame. Footsteps. Heavy. Fast. 3 men in black entered through the shattered window. Professional. Silent. Armed. Zainab scrambled backward. Her back hit the wall. Miss Adebayo. One of the men spoke with surgical calm. Come with us. We don't want to hurt you. Then leave. That's not an option. She looked around desperately. The bedroom door was 15 feet away. Too far. The men were advancing. She was trapped. The door exploded open. Not metaphorically. Literally. The heavy oak panels burst inward as a body came through, moving with lethal precision. He was not the man she knew. Not the quiet voice on midnight phone calls. Not the man who rested his head in her lap and talked about children's names. This was the silent monarch. This was the man who had eliminated every rival at 23. This was the dragon in the tattoo come to life. The first attacker turned, raising his weapon. Min Jae was faster. He closed the distance in 2 steps, disarming the man with a movement so fluid it seemed choreographed. The weapon clattered across the floor. Min Jae's elbow connected with the man's temple. He collapsed. The second attacker lunged. Min Jae caught his arm, twisted, and used the man's momentum to send him crashing through the remains of the bedroom door. The third raised his gun. Pointed it directly at Zainab. One more step and I. Min Jae stopped. The room froze. Zainab could hear her own heartbeat. Could hear the rain that had begun falling outside. Could hear the attackers breathing, ragged, terrified. Because even with a gun in his hand pointing at a defenseless woman, this man was afraid. Min Jae. Put the gun down, Min Jae said. His voice was quiet. Conversational. More terrifying than any shout. I have my orders. Your orders came from a dead man. Yoon's assets were frozen 40 minutes ago. His security team has been neutralized. His house is surrounded. Min Jae's eyes never left the gunman. You have no employer. No extraction plan. No future. Unless you put that weapon down. The man's hand trembled. If you harm her, Min Jae continued, and his voice dropped to something barely human, there is nowhere on this earth you can hide. I will find you. I will find everyone you've ever loved. And I will ensure they understand exactly what you did tonight. The gun lowered. Dropped to the floor. The man raised his hands. Min Jae's security team flooded the room seconds later, restraining all 3 attackers and sweeping the rest of the estate. But Min Jae didn't watch. He was already across the room. Already on his knees beside Zainab. Already pulling her into his arms. Are you hurt? His voice had changed completely. The cold fury was gone, replaced by raw, unfiltered terror. "I'm okay," she whispered. "You're shaking. So are you." He looked down at his hands. He was right. The most feared man in Korea was trembling like a child. "I almost lost you," he breathed. "If I had been 30 seconds later." "But you weren't." "But I could have been." "But you weren't." She cupped his face in her hands. Forced him to look at her. Rain was hammering against the broken window now. Water streamed across the floor, soaking them both. In the cold light of the storm, his tattoo was fully visible. His shirt torn, his chest exposed, the dragon and tiger and spider lilies displayed in their terrible beauty. He looked savage. Magnificent. Broken. And completely, irrevocably hers. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. "You should." "I know. But you won't." "No." He pressed his forehead against hers. Rain and tears mixed on their skin. "I love you," he said. The words fell from him like they had been fighting to escape his chest for months. Like they had been building pressure behind walls of control and discipline and fear until the dam simply couldn't hold anymore. "I love you, Zainab. Not the way my father loved my mother. Possessively, destructively. I love you the way sunlight exists. Inevitably. Completely. Without condition." She kissed him. Swiftly. Then desperately. Then with everything she had. His arms tightened around her. The rain pounded against the ruins of the window. And somewhere in the darkness of that shattered room, two broken people began to build something whole. The rest of the night faded into quiet intimacy, whispered promises, and the warmth of two bodies refusing to let go. Fade to black. Dawn arrived gray and heavy. The rain had stopped, but the clouds remained, a bruised sky hanging over the mountains like a warning. Min-jae hadn't slept. He sat in his study, dressed in fresh black clothing, the tattoo hidden once more beneath immaculate fabric. His expression had returned to its default state. Controlled. Unreadable. But his eyes were different. Darker. Sharper. The eyes of a man who had made a decision and would not be turned from it. Secretary Han entered. "We found him." "Where?" "A private airfield outside Incheon. He was attempting to leave the country." "Attempting." "We intercepted him. He's being brought here now." Min-jae nodded once. "Prepare the lower study. Full security. No weapons in the room except mine." "Sir." "That wasn't a suggestion, Han." "Yes, sir." Kwon Tae-hyun was brought in 40 minutes later. He looked diminished without his usual composure. His suit was wrinkled. His hair disheveled. A cut above his left eyebrow suggested he hadn't come willingly. But when he entered the study and saw Min-jae sitting in the leather chair by the fireplace, something in his expression shifted. Not fear. Resignation. "You always were faster than me," Kwon said. Min-jae didn't respond. Kwon sat in the chair opposite without being invited. The fire crackled between them. "How long?" Min-jae finally asked. "How long what?" "How long have you been working against me?" Kwon was quiet for a long moment. 18 months. The number hit Min-jae like a bullet. 18 months. That meant Kwon had been plotting long before Zainab. Long before the council meeting. Long before the dissolution. This had never been about the Nigerian woman. Why? Kwon leaned forward. His eyes were bright. Almost fevered. Because you were destroying everything we built. Every reform. Every legitimate business. Every step away from the old ways. You thought you were saving the organization. But you were weakening it. I was evolving it. You were killing it. Kwon's voice cracked. Your father built an empire that lasted 40 years. You've spent 5 years dismantling it. And for what? So you could feel clean? So you could sleep at night? Yes. The simple honesty of the answer seemed to stun Kwon. You're a fool. Maybe. Min-jae stood slowly. But I'm a fool who still has a choice. You don't. What are you going to do? Min-jae walked to the window. The morning light caught the edge of his tattoo through his sleeve, just the tiger's eye, peering out from beneath dark fabric. I'm going to do what you never expected. Kill me. Let you live. Kwon stared. I'm turning everything over to the authorities. Agent Park has been building a case with my cooperation for the past week. Every financial record. Every transaction. Every name. Min-jae turned. Including yours. The color drained from Kwon's face. You'll go to prison. A long time. But you'll go alive. Min-jae paused. Consider it a final act of friendship from a fool. Min-jae. We're done, Kwon. The words were quiet. Final. Like the last note of a song that would never be played again. Kwon's jaw clenched. His eyes glistened. I didn't want to hurt her, he whispered. The Adebayo woman. I told you no violence. You told armed men to enter the bedroom of the woman I love at 3 a.m. Min-jae's voice was ice. You lost the right to claim nobility when you made that choice. I was trying to save you. No. You were trying to save yourself. Kwon closed his eyes. A single tear slid down his cheek. She's good for you, he said softly. I knew it the moment I met her. She's everything you deserve and nothing you expected. Then why? Kwon opened his eyes. Because I was jealous. Not of her. Of what she represents. A future I can never have. The confession hung in the air. Raw. Painful. True. Min-jae looked at his oldest friend. At the man who had been beside him through darkness and blood and unimaginable loss. At the man who had just tried to destroy the only light he had ever found. Goodbye, Kwon. Security entered. Kwon was escorted out without resistance. At the door he paused. Back. For what it's worth. I'm sorry. Min-jae didn't respond. The door closed. And 20 years of brotherhood ended with the quiet click of a lock. The weeks that followed were chaos. But it was controlled chaos. The kind that only Kang Min-jae could orchestrate. Working with Agent Park and a covert task force within Korea's National Intelligence Service, Min-jae systematically dismantled the criminal syndicate his family had built over 4 decades. Financial accounts were frozen. Shell companies were dissolved. Council members were arrested one by one. Director Yoon during a lavish dinner party, his wine glass still raised in a toast when the agents entered. General Shin turned himself in after his military contacts abandoned him overnight. Prosecutor Beck fled to Singapore and was extradited within 72 hours. The news coverage was relentless. Hanyang Industries so cooperates in massive criminal takedown. The silent monarch breaks his silence. Inside the fall of Korea's most powerful syndicate. Kang Min-jae, criminal or hero? The nation debates. Public opinion was divided. Some called him a traitor. A man who had betrayed his own people. Others called him brave. A man who had chosen redemption over power. Min-jae didn't care about public opinion. He cared about one thing. One person. Zainab had returned to her cottage during the chaos. Not because Min-jae wanted her to leave. But because she needed space. Needed to process. Needed to stand on her own ground and decide, truly decide what she wanted. He baked every day. Pies. Cakes. Breads. Pastries that she delivered to neighbors, to the local orphanage, to anyone who crossed her path. Her grandmother's recipe book sat open on the counter. Always open. Always waiting. She spoke to Min-jae every night. Brief calls. Careful conversations. Both of them navigating the aftermath of a storm that had nearly destroyed them. The legal proceedings will take months, he told her one evening. I've been granted immunity in exchange for full cooperation, but there will be hearings. Testimony. Scrutiny. I know. My reputation will never recover. Your soul will. He was quiet for a long time. I don't deserve you. That's not your decision to make. Then whose is it? Mine. And I've already made it. Zainab didn't expect the letter. It arrived on a crisp Monday morning, thick cream-colored envelope, elegant calligraphy, the scent of expensive cologne. Miss Adebayo. I was privileged to attend the cultural festival at Hanyang Botanical Estate last autumn, where I had the pleasure of sampling your remarkable pastries. Your talent is extraordinary, and I would be honored to discuss a potential business partnership. Please join me for lunch at your convenience. With sincere admiration, Park Jun-ho, Gyeomairi Hospitality Group. Zainab googled the name. Park Jun-ho was 31. Handsome. Wealthy. CEO of one of Korea's largest hotel chains. And, according to multiple society columns, one of Seoul's most eligible bachelors. She mentioned the letter to Min-jae that evening. The silence that followed was different from his usual silences. This one had weight. Temperature. Gravity. Park Jun-ho, he repeated. You know him. We've crossed paths. Is he dangerous? Not in the way you mean. Then in what way? Another silence. He's charming, educated, successful. From a legitimate family with no criminal connections. A pause that seemed to stretch for years. He's everything I'm not. Zainab recognized what was happening. The most powerful man she had ever known was jealous. And terrified. I'm not interested in him, she said firmly. You should be. Stop telling me what I should be. I'm being realistic. You're being afraid. And I didn't fall in love with a man who lets fear make his decisions. Silence. Then softly. You said you fell in love with me. She blinked. Rewound her own words. She hadn't said that explicitly before. Not in those exact terms. Yes, she said. I did. I do. I'm in love with you, Min-jae. She heard him exhale. A sound she had never heard from him before. Like relief. Like surrender. Like a man who had been holding his breath for 28 years and finally remembered how to let go. Have lunch with him if you want, he said. Discuss the business opportunity. I trust you. You trust me. With everything. She smiled. Then trust this. I'm having lunch with a potential business partner. Nothing more. I know. And Min-jae. Yes. Stop trying to push me toward someone else. It's insulting. Pause. And then, incredibly, miraculously, he laughed. Real laugh. Low and warm and slightly rusty from disuse. But real. Understood. The lunch with Park Joon-ho was pleasant. Professional. And exactly what Zainab had expected. He was charming. Effortlessly so. He talked about partnering with her to create a Nigerian-Korean fusion dessert line for his hotel restaurants. The numbers were impressive. The opportunity was real. But beneath the business proposal, Zainab could see something else. The way his eyes lingered. The way his hand brushed hers when passing documents. The way he leaned forward when she spoke as though her words were the most fascinating thing he had ever heard. He was interested in her. Not just professionally. You're an extraordinary woman, he said as they finished dessert. I hope you know that. Thank you. And this is a generous proposal. I'll consider it carefully. Perhaps we could discuss it further over dinner? This weekend. Zainab met his eyes. Mr. Park, I should be transparent. I'm in a relationship. His expression flickered, disappointment quickly concealed. The fortunate man being? Kang Min-jae. The name landed like a thunderclap. Park Joon-ho's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Surprise. Concern. And finally respect. I see. He straightened. Then I wish you both well. The business offer stands regardless. Thank you. They shook hands. Professional. Clean. But as Zainab left the restaurant, she noticed a black car across the street. Inside, she caught the briefest glimpse of Min-jae's profile. Watching. Waiting. Making sure she was safe. She smiled to herself. Some habits she realized even love couldn't change. And some habits didn't need to change at all. The public declaration came 6 months after the council's fall. Min-jae had finished testifying before the National Assembly. The hearings had been grueling. Weeks of questions. Accusations. Cameras. Reporters dissecting every word. Through it all, he had remained what he always was. Calm. Controlled. Unbreakable. But when the hearings ended and reporters swarmed him outside the assembly building, one question cut through the noise. Mr. Kang. Is it true that you dismantled your family's criminal empire because of a foreign woman? The crowd went silent. Cameras flashed. Microphones thrust forward. Min-jae stopped walking. His security team tensed. Secretary Han moved to redirect, but Min-jae raised a hand. He turned to face the reporters. His expression was composed. But something in his eyes was different. Brighter. Warmer. Alive. I dismantled my family's criminal empire, he said, his voice clear and steady, because it was the right thing to do. Because the legacy I inherited was built on suffering. Because I refused to become what was expected of me. He paused. But if you're asking whether one extraordinary person showed me that I had a choice, then yes. She did. The crowd erupted. Questions overlapped. Who is she? What's her name? Will you? Her name is Zainab Adebayo. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. She is the bravest, kindest, most remarkable person I have ever known. She saw me when no one else bothered to look. She stayed when anyone rational would have run. He looked directly into the nearest camera. And if she's watching this, which I suspect she is, I want her to know something. A breath. The world held still. You changed everything. Not because you tried to, but because you simply were. You walked across a garden with a slice of pie and reminded me that I was human. His voice softened. I love you. Completely. Irrevocably. Without condition. He turned and walked away. The footage went viral within the hour. Zainab was watching from her cottage. Flour on her hands. Tears streaming down her face. Laughing and crying at the same time. Her phone rang. She answered. That was either the bravest or the most foolish thing you've ever done, she said through her tears. Probably both. The entire country is going to have opinions about this. Let them. Your board of directors. Doesn't matter. The media. Irrelevant. Your reputation. Was destroyed months ago. Might as well rebuild it on truth. She laughed, a sound that was pure sunlight. Come home, she whispered. I'm already on my way. He took him to Nigeria. Not immediately. Not until the legal proceedings were concluded and his travel restrictions were lifted. But when the time came, Min-jae boarded a commercial flight. No private jet, no security detail larger than two, and flew to Lagos. It was the first time in his life he had traveled without an army around him. It terrified him. It thrilled him. Zainab's extended family was enormous. Aunties who controlled rooms with a single glance. Uncles who spoke in proverbs and expected you to decode the meaning yourself. Cousins who ranged from toddlers to grandparents. And at the center of it all, Zainab's mother, Adunni Adebayo. A woman whose authority required no corporate title. No criminal empire. Just the unshakable certainty that she was always, inevitably, right. The first meeting was held at the family compound in Ibadan. A sprawling property filled with laughter, cooking smoke and children running barefoot across red earth. Min-jae stepped out of the car wearing a simple white shirt and dark trousers. No suit. No armor. For the first time in years he felt exposed. Zainab took his hand. They're going to love you. They're going to interrogate me. Same thing. Adunni Adebayo stood on the porch. Arms crossed. Expression severe. She studied Min-jae the way a jeweler studies a gemstone. Searching for flaws, testing for authenticity. So, she said, you are the Korean billionaire who has been occupying my daughter's heart. Yes, ma'am. You look thin. Do they not feed you in Korea? I eat regularly. She turned to Zainab. He's too polite. I don't trust polite men. Mama. Adunni looked back at Min-jae. Her expression softened just barely. Can you cook? No. Can you learn? Yes. A long, considering silence. Then Adunni stepped forward and took both his hands in hers. Her grip was firm. Her palms were warm. My daughter sees something in you, she said. Zainab has her grandmother's eyes. She sees what others cannot. So I will trust her vision. But know this, Kang Min-jae. She leaned closer. If you break her heart, I will not need a criminal empire to make you suffer. A Nigerian mother is more dangerous than any syndicate. He believed her. Completely. I understand. Adunni smiled. It transformed her entire face. Good. Now come inside. The jollof rice is almost ready and I need someone to taste it. The week in Nigeria was the happiest of Min-jae's life. He didn't know how to say that. Didn't have the vocabulary for it. Happiness was not a language he had ever been taught. But sitting in Zainab's family compound, surrounded by people who argued and laughed and teased and embraced with equal ferocity, he understood something fundamental. This was what he had been fighting for. Not power. Not legacy. Not control. This family. Connection. Belonging. On the last night he sat beside Zainab on the compound's rooftop, watching stars appear in a sky uncontaminated by city lights. I want to marry you, he said. The words came out without preamble. Without ceremony. Just truth. Zainab turned to look at him. Her eyes reflected starlight. Was that a proposal? It was a statement of intent. She laughed. In Nigeria, proposals involve kneeling. And usually a much longer speech. I'll kneel if you want. I want. He knelt. On a rooftop in Ibadan. Beneath Nigerian stars. With the sound of her mother's laughter drifting up from below and the scent of jollof rice still clinging to both of them. He took her hands. Zainab Adebayo. I've spent my entire life building walls. You walked through every single one. You saw the worst of me and chose to stay. You offered me a slice of pie when I had forgotten how to accept kindness. His voice broke slightly. He didn't try to fix it. I can't promise you perfection. I can't promise there won't be difficult days. But I can promise you this. Every morning I wake up, you will be the first thing I choose. Not duty. Not legacy. Not fear. You. Tears fell from her eyes like rain. Will you marry me? She knelt with him. Face to face. Heart to heart. Yes. From below, the sound of cheering erupted. Apparently the entire family had been listening. The wedding was held at the Hanyang Botanical Estate. The same gardens where they had met. The same lake. The same lanterns. But transformed. Traditional Korean silk banners hung beside Nigerian oso oak fabric in deep indigo and gold. The ceremony incorporated both cultures. A Korean tea ceremony followed by Nigerian wine-carrying traditions. Min-jae wore a traditional Korean hanbok in midnight blue and black, his tattoo hidden beneath the elegant layers, though those closest to him could see the dragon's tail curling just above his collar. Zainab wore white lace interwoven with traditional Yoruba attire patterns. Her natural curls were adorned with white flowers and gold pins. She was breathtaking. The kind of beautiful that made the world pause. Secretary Han wept. He pretended it was allergies. No one believed him. Amara served as maid of honor and gave a speech that was equal parts roast and love letter. Adunni Adebayo sat in the front row, arms crossed, expression severe, until her daughter appeared at the end of the garden path. Then she cried harder than anyone. The vows were private. Spoken only between the two of them, their voices lost beneath the music. But those close enough saw Min-jae's lips move. Saw the tears on his face. Saw Zainab place her hand over his heart, over the dragon, and whisper something that made the silent monarch close his eyes and breathe. The kiss was gentle. Slow. The beginning and end of everything. 1 year later. The cottage was different now. Expanded. Renovated. But still undeniably hers. The kitchen was larger. Professional-grade equipment installed by Min-jae, who had learned that the fastest way to his wife's heart was through better ovens. The garden was bigger. White roses planted among Nigerian hibiscus, Korean chrysanthemums beside African violets. And on the porch overlooking the valley sat 2 chairs. One for her. One for him. Zainab stood at the kitchen counter. Flour on her hands. Her grandmother's recipe book opened beside her. Mama's cinnamon honey pie. She was baking for the 2nd annual cultural festival at Hanyang Botanical Estate. The festival had become a tradition. Funded by the Kang Adebayo Foundation, dedicated to bridging cultures and supporting communities. It was the legacy Min-jae had chosen. Not blood. Not fear. Connection. She heard footsteps behind her. Arms wrapped around her waist. Warm breath against her neck. You're getting flour on my shirt, Min-jae murmured. You shouldn't sneak up on a woman holding a rolling pin. Noted. He pressed his lips to her shoulder. How's the pie? Perfect. As always. Humble. Accurate. He smiled against her skin. A real smile. Unguarded. The kind of smile that had taken 28 years and one extraordinary woman to unlock. Outside the sun was setting. Golden light poured through the kitchen windows. On the counter beside the pie sat a photograph. Their wedding day. 2 worlds. 1 love. And beside the photograph, tucked into a simple wooden frame, was a handwritten note in Min-jae's precise script. You walked across a garden. You offered me a slice of pie. You changed everything. Forever yours. Zainab placed the finished pie on the cooling rack. Stepped onto the porch. Looked out over the valley. The mountains were painted in twilight, purple and gold and rose. Min-jae joined her. Took her hand. Together they watched the world grow quiet. 2 people who had found each other across continents and cultures in impossible odds. 2 people who had chosen love when fear would have been easier. 2 people who had built something beautiful from the ruins of something broken. And it had all started with a pie. Sometimes the most powerful force in the world isn't money. It isn't power. It isn't even courage. It's the simple, terrifying act of offering kindness to a stranger and meaning it. Because you never know whose heart you might change, including your own. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. If it touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support means everything and helps us continue creating stories filled with love, hope, and the belief that kindness can change the world. Until next time.